Hey, everybody, and welcome to the HERstory Collaborative. My name is Jen Buck, and I'm your host here in the Collab. I'm a professional speaker, executive strategist, author of 5 books, and a nonprofit founder. My speaking and training business is focused on advocating, activating, and amplifying high-performing women. And that's what the HERstory Collaborative is all about. Trailblazing women who are changing their little corner of the world. And today's guest has been changing the world, let me tell you. Her name is Civia Tamarkin. Civia is an award-winning investigative journalist, documentary filmmaker, and former television news executive. She has produced independent and cable documentaries, as well as developed programming content, models, and strategies for cable, internet, and digital global platforms. Civia was formerly a CNN executive and executive producer of CNN's award-winning weekly news magazine show, CNN and Time. She produced investigative segments and series for ABC World News Tonight, half-hour specials for Nightline, and contributed to ABC's coverage of major news stories. Civia has contributed to numerous magazines and newspapers and has received a National News and Documentary Emmy, National Emmy nominations, National Headliner Awards, and an Edward R. Murrow Award, and awards from the Society of Professional Journalists, the Overseas Press Club of America, and the Chicago Headline Club. Civia is a nationally recognized speaker and authority on the collateral damage from the war against reproductive rights and reproductive justice. Currently, she is the president of the Arizona section of National Council of Jewish Women, a leading nationwide progressive advocacy organization that influences policy from the State House to the White House. My gosh, Civia, you are such a rock star. Welcome to the Collab.
Oh, thank you, Jen. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
You are such a dynamo. I have been just absolutely, stalking and following and just learning from you for several years. And it really is an honor for me to call you friend because, as I've told you before, you're really sort of, true north for me. And I look at you and think that's who I want to be like. So this is totally huge for me. And I adore you. And I'm so grateful for you being here.
Well, it is just my pleasure. We have indeed been sisters in the trenches for several years now.
Yes.
On immigration rights and reproductive rights, trying to change the world together. So
Yes.
I am thrilled to be able to have this conversation.
Yes. One of the things that I always talk about in the collaborative is that my job as a woman leading in business today is not to break the glass ceilings. It's to really have respect and admiration for the women who came before me, who broke the glass ceiling. But my job is to clear away the shards of glass for the women who are coming after me. Right. And I feel so strongly that we've got to be able to really pay homage to those who did not have the access that I have today. And you're one of them. Working in a predominantly male environment, in the news media, and I would imagine print as well, you have broken so many barriers for the women who came after you. And I imagine that was incredibly challenging when you were coming up in your career.
It was always very challenging. I can't say that I alone was, one of the pioneers. I mean, my role models were the women journalists who came before me, of course. But nevertheless, the sexism prevailed, the limitations prevailed. I mean, I remember one of my classic moments was when I was an executive at CNN. I learned that the male senior producers were having a meeting no one had informed me. And so I walked right into that bastion of testosterone and said, just that. There is far too much testosterone around this table. And I pulled up a chair, much to their shock. Yes. And I conducted the meeting. But, I always said to the people who work for me, particularly the younger women who came aboard as production assistants, associate producers, when they would come to me and they'd say the male editor, for example, is giving them a hard time, I said, you take charge. You are the producer on this piece.
Yeah.
And let him know who's the boss. And then if you have to go into the bathroom and cry or throw up or whatever, do it. but you must capture the moment. And so I always tried to do that. I
Yeah.
never wanted to show the weakness. One of the wisest pieces of advice I was ever given was, if someone says, "Do you know how to do it?" Whatever it is, you say yes and go figure it out.
Yes, absolutely. And, that all just gave me goosebumps. And when I think about what so many women do, as I am working with them, they are always about making sure that they've got every single I and every single T, dotted and crossed, which I admire, but they prep so much that they become paralyzed. And
Right.
they are so worried that they won't have enough. We've seen the statistics where, you've got women who will not actually apply for a job unless they have 100% of the
Right.
qualifications. And when men were put through the same survey, they applied if they had 60. And it's such a testament to how women sort of move through the world. And there is sort of I often call it the feminine dilemma that says that, I have to have all the things. I have to
Right.
be all the things. And I can't cut in line, and I can't misrepresent. So I always am waiting until I'm ready. And I love that you said that, because the answer is yes. I know what I'm doing. And I just think that
Exactly.
is such a great piece of advice. And yeah, go and cry and scream and throw something in another space, not in front of the person that you're dealing with,
Right. Take control, take charge, show your confidence,
Yeah.
and be confident that you will, if you don't know something, that you will be able to figure it out.
Yeah. There's this quote by Ram Dass that says, "Be here now." And it's
Right.
all about, being present and aware and all of that. But one of the things I use in my practice with my clients is be her now. Just be
Mm-hmm.
her, just step into who you want to be, who you expect to be, who you feel you
Exactly.
are, and just be her now. And I think that sort of being and acting as if is such a powerful tool, owning like or acting like you own a space, and feeling like you belong is half the battle, because that feminine dilemma plays with our head.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
And developing the courage and confidence. I mean, I am of a generation that I was raised in a very, very narrow sphere.
Mm.
I wanted to go off to New York and be a writer. My parents insisted that I get at least a minor in education so that I can be an English teacher.
To fall back
Um,
on.
to fall back on. And actually, that's how I did start my career. I was
Okay.
teaching English and journalism, and I was advisor to the high school yearbook.
Hmm.
This is in the late 60s. This is during Vietnam.
Okay.
And the principal came to me and said, "We have to cut back on the funding for the yearbook and the newspaper because the football team needs new uniforms.
No.
And those positions on the football field prepare our boys for Vietnam." And it was at that point that I realized, wait a minute. And I stood up and I went and I got outside funding for the newspaper and, the
Wow.
yearbook and so on. But it was a moment, a turning point for me when I just said, I am not accepting anything as it is if I don't agree.
Yes.
And so, that has been a hallmark. Of course, I'm the 60s generation. So
Yeah.
we grew up thinking, I mean, I was part of the anti-war movement.
Uh-huh.
We viscerally knew that war was wrong.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I picked up to go there in the end as a correspondent that I realized how correct we were.
Wow.
But we were part of the generation. I marched for civil rights, to end the war, for women's rights, for reproductive justice.
Yes.
And we thought we had won.
Mm.
We thought there was a revolution and we had won,
Right.
only to discover that we are falling back into the old mental modalities and the old way of thinking. And so I've really never stopped fighting
Right.
because you always saw an opportunity for change.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's probably what I admire so much about you. I mean, there are 1,000 things, but you don't sit. You don't allow yourself to get comfortable with what is. you're always looking for how it could be, how we can fix it. And I know that that is a hallmark of who you are. You know, if you need information, if you want something to change, go to Civia Tamarkin. You know, it's just sort of what you're known for. And you do get your hands dirty, and you do put in the long hours, and you don't ask from others what you won't do yourself, you know, in the trenches. And I think that that is so admirable because, you know, you've done this before, and here we are again on so many
Here
levels.
we are.
It's just,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But it was that 60s mentality that I then, as an activist on campuses and so on, that I then brought to my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always wanted to be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I would be the great novelist, you know, like everyone else. But I found that journalism really was the platform for me to carry out the advocacy.
Mm.
So that particularly doing investigative and profiles and exposing what was going on. So I brought that to my career.
That's amazing. So you have created a documentary that has gone far and wide. And this documentary can be seen right now on Netflix and I believe Amazon and
No,
probably
it's not Netflix, not Netflix.
not
It was
Netflix.
on Hulu, no
Okay.
longer, but it's on iTunes and Vudu and Amazon and
Yep.
most of the platforms, the
Okay.
streaming platform.
Got it. So tell us a little bit about the film and, you know, what spurred you to create it?
Well, the film is called Birthright, a War Story. And as I said, I had been an activist in the 60s and early 70s, working for ERA, working to legalize abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And like everybody else, we thought we had accomplished these goals.
Yeah.
And I began to see how these rights were being eroded. Obviously, the ERA was never fully ratified. Roe v. Wade was passed, but immediately, 3 years later, we had the Hyde Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
which proposed by a congressman from Illinois, which is my home state.
Right.
And it limited access because it prevented any government funding that included Medicaid
Yeah.
for abortions. So we began to see the fundamental right eroded 3
Mhm.
years after the Supreme Court decision.
Yeah.
And then again, there were other laws passed by states, parental consent laws. Little by little, you began to see an erosion.
Yep.
What did it for me was the Hobby Lobby decision in 2014,
Mm-hmm.
when the Supreme Court ruled that contraceptives could be precluded from business health insurance plans,
Right.
corporate plans.
I remember.
And birth control, contraception, was viewed as an abortifacient.
Mm-hmm.
I never even heard of that term.
Right.
And the point was, how did we get here? And how did the opposition movement build such momentum and evolve from the objections of initially Catholic clergy
Mm.
to this movement that wields such influence?
Yes.
So a friend said to me, you have to document this. And I wasn't quite sure how to formulate the message at first.
Yeah.
But I went out, I knew I wanted to show the evolution of the opposition movement. I wanted to show how the gains we had made were diminished.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did this film. I didn't want to do another abortion film. There have been so many films with abortion stories.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about the collateral damage from the war against reproductive health care access,
Yes.
and how this has impacted women, not just who want to terminate a pregnancy, but it's impacted the birthing process, women who wanted to have natural childbirth, who wanted to deliver at home.
Yes.
So I began to recognize that the strength of all this was not about reproductive rights, but reproductive justice, the movement that women of, well, African American women started in the mid 1990s. And that's really where the
Mm.
strength is. And that's what I wanted to show, the criminalization of pregnancy and the impact of this opposition against abortion on every aspect of the
Yeah.
reproductive health care process.
And I remember watching it, and it was that moment where your head just explodes, like the emoji. I had no idea. And that's when you've nailed it, when you have opened up
Right,
a box that people had no idea existed, that you've got families who aren't able to fulfill their own birth plan
right.
because a religious hospital steps in and makes that decision for you. And it was just mind-boggling for me to learn this war on women. That's really what it is. This
Right.
war on women that was so deep seated and long standing that somehow we all just sort of function in the world and we aren't aware of it until someone pulls the curtain back. And that's what your film did for me. In fact, I was so moved by it that I was sending friends of mine the link, in other states and saying, you've got to watch my friend's film. It was just really eye-opening because this isn't about abortion.
Right.
This is about women's right to their own body and plan for their birth, of a child. And I just don't think people really even know.
Well, it's also about the value of a woman's life.
Yes.
The opposition, unfortunately, we seized upon the terminology, which we thought was appropriate in the times, pro-choice.
Hmm.
It's a woman's decision.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, the terminology has been negated. It's taken on a cavalier connotation,
it has.
choice. And they very, very influentially, the opposition seized on the term pro-life. Now, there is nothing more pro-life than caring about the life of a woman
Yeah.
and a woman's health care. But they seized on it. And what has happened is that life is now given the same value as a fertilized egg, as a group of cells, as a zygote. I mean, in Arizona, they have been trying to pass a personhood law that would give fertilized eggs, zygotes, embryos, and fetuses the very same rights, protections, and privileges under law as the person that is carrying it. So what you begin to see is the intersectionality of racism,
Yes.
sexism, and classism.
Yes.
And it's really about misogyny, the origins of the fundamentalist beliefs have to do with the subservience of women.
Yes.
And it was the rise of the fundamentalist religious movement coupled with Catholic Church
Yeah.
that created such momentum. And once they took over, once the Republican Party welcomed them in, it was a very, very forceful, big tent, big money coalition.
Yeah. And it is running rampant in this country right now. It is, I'm just watching state after state, um, law after law get passed, or it's so disappointing to see that you all fought so hard to come this far, and just within months this year we're seeing law after
Right.
law after law change, and it's just so disheartening.
Well, it's intentional. People were so focused at the top of the ballot, and they did not pay as much attention to what was downstream, down ballot.
Mhm.
And so we have Republican controlled legislatures in the majority of states, and they see an opportunity with the Trump Supreme Court to fill a pipeline of cases intentionally challenging reproductive health care access,
Yeah.
reproductive rights, of course, gay rights, transgender
Yes.
rights. I mean, the whole LGBTQ plus um, equities. And so they're hoping that this pipeline will be so filled that one of these cases is going to land in the court.
Hmm.
And that's what's happening here. And when that does, it will be a reversal of so much, because the likelihood is that everything will fall back to the states
Yeah.
and that the state laws will supersede.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. What would you say to women who are tuning in? Women and men, I don't want to exclude men because
Right.
we also have men, of course, who are extraordinary allies and are just as actively a part of making sure that they are pushing, the right things forward. What would you say to people tuning in that could inspire them, help them, motivate them to step in and help this cause?
First of all, you're absolutely right. This is not a woman's issue.
Right.
This is a human rights issue.
Yes.
And men are every bit as significant to this. Men who care about women, who live with women, who love women, who
Right.
want families, who care about the well being of their partners. So if a pregnancy is dangerous and life threatening, it affects the male as well, the
Yes.
partner.
That's
But
right.
what I would say is you can't be on the sidelines anymore.
Right.
You must hear the alarms that are ringing. You must open your eyes and you must get involved. And you must pressure local legislators, national, federal legislators, and businesses. It is time for businesses to step up and exercise their influence, and it is time for everybody to exercise their pocketbook
Yes.
influence. We
Absolutely.
saw what happened in a state like North Carolina when they passed the transgender bathroom ban. Companies stood up, they pulled out conventions, they pulled out projects, and
Yeah.
the ban was reversed. We had that in Arizona with SB 1070,
Yes.
random stop and search
That's
of,
right.
for
Brown
immigration
people.
documentation.
Hmm.
And it was so racist. But we saw when economic pressure came to bear, that law was reversed. We need the same thing to happen with reproductive health care and bodily autonomy. This is not just about abortion.
That's
This
right.
is about interfering with the doctor, the physician patient relationship.
Yeah.
It's about criminalizing doctors, criminalizing pregnancy, because if you decide that a fertilized egg, a zygote, has the same privileges under the Constitution, then what happens if the person carrying that fertilized egg lifts a package that's heavy and
Right.
miscarries?
Right.
Is that manslaughter?
Right.
So you begin to wonder about, the implications here are so far reaching
Yes.
that we need economic pressure to
Yes.
come to bear.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Absolutely. And, I hope that people are inspired to learn more. And I know that NCJW, National Coalition of Jewish Women, is very actively on the front lines and has always been the leader
Right.
in reproductive health. And
National Council
what
of
did I
Jewish
say?
Women,
What?
Coalition.
Oh, council. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me. And I just am so grateful for all you've done. I want to transition here into some fun questions, if you're okay with
Okay,
that. I've got some speed
sure.
round questions, and I like to ask these just so that we can all get sort of a different, lighter, perspective on who you are. So I've got 10 questions. I'm going to throw them at you. And if you can just give me an answer to those, we'll just get through these and give people a better idea of who Civia really is when she's not on camera. Good?
Okay.
Okay. Your first question is, if you got a chance to sit for an hour on a park bench with a famous woman from history, who would that woman be?
Well, I suppose the obvious one would be a Susan B. Anthony, but I would bring it more contemporary. I would love to sit with Catherine Graham, who was the publisher of the Washington Post during Watergate.
Wow. Yes. Oh, what a cool answer. Yes, absolutely. When you're eating, are you a sweet person or a savory person?
Oh, definitely sweet.
Oh,
Definitely sweet. I'm Chocoholic.
Are you? Okay, I didn't know that about you. Good to know. So, if you were to win the lottery, and I'm talking about one of the big Mega Millions, big number lotteries, what would your first spend be?
Oh my goodness. Um, that's interesting because I don't think I have any. Probably pay for educational, opportunities
Mhm.
for everybody's kids that I know, for
Yeah,
grandchildren, for people who need it.
I love
Um,
that.
I don't have any real wants and needs at this stage of my life. I've done just about everything that was on my bucket list. I have met some of the most significant people, which is why that question you asked is interesting because I have met, women who were my heroes
Yes.
as a child, as a young person, the Betty Friedan's and the Steinhams and so on, so it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I have no needs of my own, but I certainly would dole it out to alleviate homelessness, hunger, educational tuition issues.
Yes. I love that. Of course you would. Of course. What's your favorite book?
I think that one of the most influential books that I read, I mean, not novels, because those always captured me, but was Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex.
Oh,
And also, I would add another one, Doris Lessing's Golden Notebook,
okay.
because those were books that influenced me as I was becoming an adult, very early 20s, and began to shape a perspective for me.
Nice, nice. I always love getting book suggestions from these interviews. It's fun for me because I'm a reader. So this I always go back and write everything down after I'm editing. So I know you touched on the best advice you had ever been given. Um, do you have any other pieces of advice you would give to women in particular, since that's who our audience is primarily?
I would say, in addition to what I had said earlier, you can do it all. You just have to learn how to balance your opportunities, your wants, your needs, and your time. But you can do it all and you can have it all. Do not settle for less.
Nice. Nice. I love that. Okay, so when you're processing, are you more of a thinker, a talker, or a doer?
I would say that I am more of a talker. I talk through
Mhm.
what, you know, what's on my mind here.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the same way. Okay, this is a very important question here. Do you put pineapple on your pizza?
No,
No. Oh, you're
no, no,
Chicago. Of
no,
course you don't.
no.
Nope, you're a purist. I
That's the
understand.
savory part. To
Yeah,
me, pizza is savory.
got it.
Chocolate is another matter, but pizza is savory.
Got it. So imagine this. You are walking onto a stage with 50,000 people in the audience. They're there to hear you speak. What is your theme song as you strut on stage?
I would say the song from Rocky.
Nice. Yes, I would totally agree with that. Yes. All right. So, another important question. Are you living past 100?
Oh, I hope so. I have
Yay.
longevity on my mother's side, so I hope so.
Nice. Love it. I'm definitely, yeah, no question. I mean, bar a bus accident or something,
Right,
right. Yeah, yeah.
of course.
I'm,
Well,
I'm
I
definitely,
shock some of my lifelong friends because they talk about being old, and I say, I'm just middle aged.
yes, totally. I love that. Absolutely. So, what's the best word to describe you?
Tenacious.
Yes, positively. I love it. And the final question here. When I'm really, really old, I hope to see. Finish that sentence.
A generation that has committed to changing the world for the better.
Perfect. 100%. So, Civia, can you tell those tuning in right now where to find you? If there's anything you can share, website pages, emails, whatever you've got, can you let people tuning in know where they can connect with you?
Sure. I'm on Facebook and you can message me. You can leave messages at our film website. It would be info at birthrightfilm.com.
Mhm.
And you can message me through National Council of Jewish Women, uh, info@ncjwaz.com.
I love it. And I'll be sure to put that into the notes on the broadcast so that people know exactly where to find you. So that's fantastic. So before we go, I just want to make sure that I give a quick nod to our sponsors. It is Go With The Flow. They are an organization out of Arizona who help students with their hygiene products when they are having their period. So what they do is create these period packs. They're darling and cute little bags, and they fill them with the goods that are needed, and they give them to the schools so that they can pass out these period packs to the students. What we know is that these graduation rates are severely impacted because what we see is that students that cannot have these items given to them at home for economic reasons, they don't attend school for 1 week a month throughout their entire 4-year high school career. So of course, as you can imagine, this impacts graduation rates greatly. And so Go With The Flow has stepped up, and they create and donate and give these packs to the schools all over Arizona, and they are growing by leaps and bounds. So if you'd like to get involved with Go With The Flow, you can go to gowiththeflowaz.org. So Civia, this has been so much fun for
Oh,
me. I really wish I could have just gone on and on and on for an hour or so, but promise me we'll have a drink
we'll
sometime
do it.
soon, and
Absolutely.
then we can just stay as long as we want, right?
We will do that. And this has been delightful. And
Oh,
I hope somewhere along the line, somebody benefits from a word or a phrase and it inspires.
yes, absolutely. That's what it's about. Everybody tuning in, we appreciate you, and we will see you in another week. Thanks so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.